Tonight, the US torpedoes an Iranian warship as Iran launches more strikes at Gulf states. Hello, I'm Pamela Medlen. This is ABC News. Emotions run high as Australians make their way back home. A man jailed for life for beating his partner to death in Perth's northeast. Revelations WA's Corruption and Crime Commission left itself open to the risk of corruption for years. And the Matildas look set to cruise to victory over Iran in their Women's Asian Cup clash on the Gold Coast. Australian military assets have been deployed to the Middle East as part of contingency plans to help bring Australians home. War in the region is widening sharply, with 10 countries now under attack from the Iranian regime. Iran continues to carry out strikes on multiple neighbours, insisting it's aiming at US military targets. NATO defences shot down a ballistic missile believed to be launched at Turkish territory. Israel and the US have been pounding Tehran and parts of Lebanon, including Beirut, while an American submarine has sunk an Iranian warship in the Indian Ocean near Sri Lanka. We'll have more on Lebanon and Australian repatriation soon. Bridget Rollison begins our coverage from Jerusalem.
An Iranian warship in the firing line. A torpedo from an American submarine sinking the vessel off the coast of Sri Lanka, killing at least 87 Iranian sailors.
This was never meant to be a fair fight, and it is not a fair fight. We are punching them while they're down, which is exactly how it should be.
The conflict spreading to the Indian Ocean and into NATO territory after the alliance's air defences destroyed an Iranian ballistic missile headed for Turkey.
We are giving warnings in the clearest way possible for similar incidents not to occur again.
While in neighbouring Syria, an unexploded missile fell near the city of Kamishli.
It terrified children, women and people in the village.
6 days into the conflict, the US claims Iran is firing fewer missiles and that American and Israeli forces will soon have full control of the country's airspace.
We're doing very well on the war front, to put it mildly, I would say. Somebody said, on a scale of 10, where would you rate it? I said about a 15.
There could soon be another front in this already complex war, with reports American-backed Kurdish fighters in Iraq could launch a ground invasion in Iran. The White House has confirmed Donald Trump has spoken to Kurdish leaders, but has denied suggestions the president has authorised such a plan. An internet blackout imposed by the regime makes it difficult for Iranians to communicate with the outside world, but a professor in Tehran who supports the regime spoke to the ABC to criticise the US operation. Americans say that this campaign is ahead of schedule and it's taken out many senior figures. Is it time up for the Islamic regime?
No, these are pipe dreams. Trump has unified Iranians more than any Iranian politician could ever do.
Pointing specifically to the bombing of a girls' school, estimated to have killed more than 160 children.
All I can say is that we're investigating that. We, of course, never target civilian targets, but we're taking a look and investigating that.
The death toll across the Middle East and beyond continuing to rise as the conflict expands. Bridget Rollison, ABC News, Jerusalem.
The federal government is refusing to say whether any Australian Defence Force personnel were on the US submarine, which sank an Iranian frigate overnight. Dozens of Australians are embedded on US attack class subs as part of their training to operate the future AUKUS submarine fleet. The Foreign Minister has confirmed Australia did not participate in the US and Israeli airstrikes on Iran, but she's refused to say whether any Australians were on the US submarine which torpedoed the Iranian warship.
Were any Australian personnel on this US submarine when it sank the Iranian frigate and left the survivors to drown?
For operational and security reasons, we do not disclose specific information regarding Australian personnel.
Israel has told residents to leave a large swathe of southern Lebanon as it expands its assault on the Iran-backed group Hezbollah. Tens of thousands of Lebanese people have already been displaced in the past few days.
The Beirut bombardment. Israeli fighter jets launching strikes across the Lebanese capital against claimed Hezbollah targets, tearing city blocks apart, while focusing on the southern suburbs of Dahia, known as the militant group's strongholds.
We will not surrender. We will defend ourselves with our capabilities and our faith, no matter the sacrifices.
Israel struck further afield too, including at this hotel in a predominantly Christian neighbourhood. As staff began the mammoth clean-up task, questions were asked about why this site was targeted.
My family lives here. I cannot knowingly accommodate someone who is being targeted. We can screen people, but we cannot know everything.
There might be some of these places that are connected or affiliated to Hezbollah.
Tens of thousands have been displaced in recent days since Hezbollah launched rockets at Israel and Israel hit back hard. That number will now rise off the back of a startling escalation from the military.
We've just arrived here in northern Israel, very close to the Lebanon border, and it's at this point that the IDF has announced an evacuation of the entirety of southern Lebanon, telling people to move north. You can hear a series of explosions just over the border as Israel intensifies its strikes in that region.
The IDF telling hundreds of thousands of people in this area, long regarded Hezbollah heartland, to leave immediately. Over the border in Israel, locals are bracing for the worst.
I'm sure that also the Lebanese don't want Hezbollah. They don't want them. We hear shooting.
So that's the sound of gunfire that we can hear from over the border?
In my opinion, this is shooting. I think the Israeli army is going inside now.
And with a front row seat to the new front, it won't be the last echoes of battle to be heard. Matthew Doran, ABC News, Metula.
More Australians are due to arrive back home tonight after a deal was struck between Gulf states and Iran to open safe airspace over the Middle East and clear the backlog of stranded passengers. Australian consular crisis teams have been deployed and military planes are on standby in the region to support further repatriations after the first commercial flight landed into Sydney last night.
Tears, cheers and relief after days of chaos and fear. Australians finally home after a back-channel deal between Gulf countries and Iran, allowing the limited opening of one safe flight corridor.
Yeah, we got her! Yeah, she's back!
Emirates flight EK414 from Dubai touching down in Sydney last night, carrying 200 passengers. Among the arrivals were more than a dozen students and teachers from Sydney's Barker College. They were on their way to Turkey for a robotics competition when the conflict forced a stopover in Dubai.
There's some very excited parents here, some very relieved staff.
We were told not to go on our phones, try to conserve battery, but we were taken to a bunker.
Sam Brown, her husband and their 4-year-old daughter had only just started a new life in Dubai.
I never thought I'd be in a situation where I heard explosions over my living room, front door rattling.
World champion triathlete Emma Carney was caught up in chaos in Bahrain. After a tense dash to the UAE and multiple flights, she finally landed in Melbourne last night.
It's wonderful to be home.
As the crisis deepens, the Australian government's confirmed it's sent 2 military transport planes to the region. A KC-30 and a C-17A was sent over earlier this week.
The government is deploying 6 crisis response teams to the region, and we've already deployed military assets as part of our contingency planning.
A second plane load of passengers is due to touch down in Sydney tonight, with more expected in coming days, although it's unclear how long the safe flight corridor will remain open. Passengers are urged to stay across updates from airlines and Smart Traveller. Relief for some as the long road home continues for those left behind. Christy Sexton-McGrath, ABC News.
Back home, a 39-year-old Perth man has been sentenced to more than 20 years for murdering his former partner in what was described as an extreme form of domestic violence. The victim's family wants her death to serve as a catalyst for change. And a warning, this story contains distressing details and images of an Indigenous person who has died.
Peter Damjanovic used his fists, a showerhead and a towel rail to bash Ms Woodley, causing dozens of injuries to her head and face. He pleaded guilty to murdering the mother of three in her Bedford home in 2023. The court heard Damjanovic had been drinking and using methamphetamine in the lead up to the assault.
He is a monster. He is a monster.
He is a monster.
And the description of how we repetitively beat her with a shower pole.
In sentencing, Justice Natalie Whitby said the attack was deliberate, persistent, violent and cruel, describing it as an extreme form of domestic violence. She said it needed to be clear that violence against women would result in significant sentences.
Domestic violence is far too prevalent within our society, and even more common experience for Aboriginal women. We would like Tiffany's death to serve us as an opportunity to change.
Damjanovic was sentenced to life with a minimum of 21 years. The family welcomed the penalty.
We love and miss her every day, but she will never be forgotten.
Damjanovic's lawyer asked Justice Whitby to recuse herself because there could be a perception of bias. She's married to the Police Minister, Rhys Whitby, who supported an awareness campaign in relation to domestic violence. But she rejected the application, saying domestic violence is an issue of broad concern and there was no evidence. Rhys Whitby spoke out specifically about this case. Peter Damjanovic's sentence was backdated to 2023. He'll be eligible for release in the 2040s. David Webber, ABC News.
And if you or someone you know needs help, please contact 1800 RESPECT by phone or their website. The attempted alleged bombing of an Invasion Day rally in Perth has sparked a federal parliamentary inquiry into racism, hate and violence directed at Indigenous people. It's alleged 32-year-old Liam Alexander Hall tossed a homemade fragment bomb filled with ball bearings and screws into the crowd on January 26. Mr Hall was the first person in Western Australia's history to be charged with a terrorism offence. A Labor-dominated federal Joint Standing Committee has now launched an inquiry into anti-Indigenous racism, including the role social media plays. Public submissions can be made with a report expected later in the year.
I think it's appropriate that the federal parliament undertake this inquiry. We will obviously have input to that inquiry. We will await the outcomes of that inquiry with a great deal of interest.
City of Stirling Mayor Mark Irwin has been elected President of WA's peak body for local government. Mr Irwin takes over from Karen Chappell in the role at the WA Local Government Association. It comes amid a major state government overhaul of the sector, with 2 councils sacked and commissioners appointed.
The reality is our communities don't want dysfunctional local government. Neither does the state government, neither does Walga. We want to work with those local governments. There's a process in place through those monitors that will be addressed, and then we can start to celebrate the success of the other 135 local governments doing incredible projects.
The state opposition is asking questions about why WA's corruption watchdog left itself exposed to corruption for at least 3 years, despite repeated warnings. The Auditor-General raised concerns about gaps in the CCC's payroll system, which could have been exploited, that were left unresolved for years.
It's usually the watchdog that gives out the criticism.
But they need to have their own house in order.
And for at least 3 years, it didn't. In 4 consecutive annual audits, the state's Auditor-General warned of significant weaknesses in the Corruption and Crime Commission's payroll system. It could, they said, allow for fictitious or fraudulent payments to be made. Problems in finance systems were identified 3 years running, and for 2 years, lax invoicing systems were highlighted, raising the risk of erroneous or fraudulent payments.
It's one of the, deficiencies of working in a small agency and a small payroll team. A number of staff have multiple responsibilities.
The lesson for the wider public sector is continue to be vigilant.
A CCC spokesperson said the Commission's understanding of the issues evolved over the years. They said while the problems were fixed in the first half of 2025, because those fixes weren't in place for more than half the year, concerns were still recorded in the most recent audit.
Now, it's one thing for it to be identified, but to be identified on the second year, the third year, indeed in the fourth year when it comes to their payroll controls, that ought to be a concern for whoever is in government.
We have a range of regulatory agencies within the public sector to make sure that we see integrity being upheld right across all our state government agencies.
But that doesn't absolve the Cook Labor government of their duty to make sure that they are holding this independent statutory body to account.
The CCC's challenges don't surprise anti-corruption expert Adam Graycar.
Small organisations are much harder to manage because the chief executive has to be across so many things because you don't have as much staff.
The Auditor-General did not find any evidence of fraudulent transactions within the CCC. Kian Burke, ABC News.
Time for a weather check now, and Kenith is here. Kenith, you're keeping an eye on those tropical lows for us.
There's still a few around, Pamela, but none of them have turned into cyclones, and the Bureau is rating all of them at a low or a very low chance of forming into a cyclone. The good news is tropical low 28U is well off the Pilbara coast and expected to dissipate as it approaches the Dampier Peninsula. Meanwhile, 30U is moving west off the Pilbara coast, but bringing some strong winds and rain to the coast. We're also seeing lows in the Northern Territory and Queensland heading west. I'll have more details soon.
Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney has used a major speech in Parliament to issue a call for middle powers to band together in the face of coercion from superpowers. But the Middle East war has loomed over the visit. Mr Carney and Anthony Albanese both calling for de-escalation, but not pressing for a ceasefire.
Far-flung friends gathering against a backdrop of war. Mark Carney greeted like family at Australia's Parliament.
Though we could not be further physically apart, Canada and Australia are strategic cousins.
The distance between our two nations has never mattered less, and the closeness of our values has never mattered more.
But the world outside is more dangerous and uncertain, both leaders grappling with the spreading disorder and violence in the Middle East. But neither are calling for a ceasefire, at least for now.
I want to see the possibility of Iran getting a nuclear weapon removed once and for all.
Before there can be a ceasefire, there needs to be a de-escalation of hostilities. Right now we have a spreading of hostilities.
Both countries know they risk becoming mere bystanders as great powers become more willing to wield economic power and deploy military force. Mr Carney using his speech to Parliament to revive his call for middle powers like Canada and Australia to form new coalitions.
The question today for middle powers like us is whether we establish the conventions and help write the new rules that will determine our security and prosperity, or let the hegemons dictate outcomes.
For all the talk of a coalition of middle powers, the brute reality is that Canada and Australia will remain dependent in important ways on both the US and China for years to come. The question is, what red lines can they draw and how can they try to enforce them?
For now, the steps are modest, the two countries penning new agreements on critical minerals, vaccines, emergency management and agreeing to set up a defence ministers' meeting.
Australia and Canada have never waited for others to write our futures.
When the rules no longer protect you, you have to protect yourself. Stephen Jedgetts, ABC News, Canberra.
Increasing costs of production are putting pressure on milk supplies. But one of the biggest dairy farms in WA is turning to solar power to ensure it remains viable.
Running 3,500 head of cattle comes at a cost for WA's largest dairy farmer.
Power charges have gone up 50% in the last 12 months. So for us, we were confronted with not only just connecting to the grid, but would we be able to afford to run it?
For decades, Peninsula Downs has relied on grid electricity and a diesel generator to pump water to grow feed. But rising costs, unreliable power supply and climate change are taking a toll.
We have to feed animals on a daily basis, and we've seen reduced rainfall, reduced recharge of our groundwater, so we're very passionate about renewables.
To save money and reduce carbon emissions, the dairy has invested $650,000 in a hybrid solar and battery system to help power the irrigation at its Scott River farm.
So we look for alternatives, and this is what we came up with, which is a hybrid system, still using the generator, but basically solar and batteries.
With the number of dairy farms dropping from around 400 to fewer than 100, it's an investment applauded by the state government.
We're keeping a close eye on it. We want to make sure that fresh milk supply in Western Australia remains.
For this farmer, there's only one way to remain viable.
We need to automate so that we're less reliant on our labour input or employed labour input. So that's the only way I see forward, adopting technology for the dairy industry to survive.
Solar power protecting fresh milk supplies in the West. Gabrielle Becerra-Mellett, ABC News, Scott River.
To finance now, and the price of oil has jumped to its highest level in a year and a half as war continues in the Middle East, while the share market managed to recoup some of its heavy losses from earlier this week. Here's David Chow.
Well, markets across the world tanked earlier this week after the US and Israel started a new war in the Middle East. But many of these markets got over their doom and gloom and rebounded, like South Korea's Kospi, up more than 10% in one day. What's behind this sudden burst of optimism is a report from the New York Times, citing unnamed officials. And that report says Iran's spy agency reached out indirectly to America's CIA to discuss terms for ending the war, something which Iranian officials publicly deny. So the hope this war might not drag on for too long is probably why oil prices haven't spiked all that much in the grand scheme of things. Certainly nowhere near as much as they did when Russia invaded Ukraine. Now that was a spike. Or perhaps markets are underestimating how serious things could get, especially if we fast forward to a few weeks from now and oil tankers still are unable or unwilling to go through the Strait of Hormuz for fear of being attacked by Iranian forces. In commodities, oil went up another 3%, which takes prices to their highest level in a year and a half. That's despite Donald Trump's pledge to protect and insure oil tankers passing through the Persian Gulf. And there was a moderate rise in the price of gold. The Australian share market, meanwhile, clawed back about 0.5%, though it's still down about 3% since the week began. Tech, defence and energy stocks did well, but Star Entertainment was today's big loser. That's after the federal court found its former CEO, Matt Becker, and former in-house lawyer, Paula Martin, breached their duties as executives by not doing enough to prevent money laundering at Star's casinos. They'll be back in court in a few days to learn how much they've been fined. And finally, the Aussie dollar is a little bit weaker at 70.5 US cents. And that's finance.
Coming up on 7:30, the rape trial that shocked the world and the brave woman who refused anonymity. Giselle Pellico shares her story with Sarah Ferguson.
What was it really like seeing those 50 men in that courtroom?
J'étais partie en me disant que je ne voulais rien laisser paraître. C'est-à-dire que je voulais rester digne, leur montrer qu'ils ne m'atteignaient pas, ils pouvaient me défier, me regarder. Alors je ne dis pas que c'était facile, il y avait des moments où j'ai eu envie d'hurler, mais je ne voulais pas leur laisser ce plaisir.
To sport, the Matildas have booked their spot in the knockout stages of the Women's Asian Cup with a comfortable 4-0 win over Iran on the Gold Coast. Alana Kennedy led the way in wet conditions with 2 goals. Several stars got important minutes under their belts.
After a frustrating 1-0 win over the Philippines, Joe Montemuro made changes for the clash with Iran, notably naming Mary Fowler to start, though it was a veteran who had the best chance at the early stages.
Beneg got to take through traffic and that's a top save.
Amy Sayer only had limited minutes in the Matildas' opening game, but she was handed a start which she didn't waste.
And it is a very special finish for Amy Sayer.
Caitlin Ford thought she had doubled the advantage before the 20-minute mark with a blistering finish, only to be ruled offside. The winger was involved in the Matildas' second, though, her tantalising cross finding Fowler, who managed to bundle it home.
It's not the cleanest goal She'll have a score, but she won't mind too much.
Australia needed a commanding win to keep the pressure on South Korea for top spot in Group A.
Now Kennedy. Oh, well, it's really lovely from Alana Kennedy on the spot.
And they took a 3-goal lead into the break. It took time for the Matildas to hit their stride after half-time before Emily Van Egmond delivered a perfect cross for Kennedy's second. Numerous stoppages for Iranian injuries stifled any momentum Australia was building in pursuit of goals, as they had to settle for a 4-goal win, meaning they must beat South Korea to top their group. Tom Wilde, ABC News.
A third-term blitz has propelled Sydney to a 132-69 win over Carlton at the SCG in Charlie Curnow's first game for the Swans. The Blues started well, leading by as much as 22 points early in the third term, but Sydney clicked into gear from there, booting 18 second-half goals on the way to a crushing win. The Swans host reigning premiers Brisbane next week, while Carlton play Richmond. Retiring Australia women's captain Elisa Healy says she's trying to enjoy her final game, a day-night test against India at the WACA grounds starting on Friday. It'll be Healy's 11th test in a 16-year career, with Australia leading the multi-format series 8-4, with 4 points awarded to the winner of this match. The hosts are yet to settle on a final 11, though Elise Perry will be given every opportunity to prove her fitness after missing the ODIs with a quad strain. Healy says she's feeling grateful as her career comes to an end.
Everyone keeps asking me how I'm going and I'm like, I'm okay, I'm all good. So, look, I'm really just enjoying it. I think that's probably been my main focus coming into this, is just to enjoy every experience and every moment, and try not to get too grumpy along the way, no matter what the results are.
Finn Allen has made fastest century in the history of the Men's T20 World Cup to help New Zealand reach the final. The opener smashed 100 off 33 balls in the Black Caps' 9-wicket win over South Africa in Kolkata. New Zealand will face the winner of tonight's semi-final between India and England. And Kenith is back with us. The hot weather isn't past us yet, Kenith.
It still certainly feels like summer, Pamela, but eventually those autumn conditions will come through. In the meantime, we had a lot of clear skies, which makes for great sunset viewing. And this has been the view from Fremantle recently. Don't forget to send us your photos at waweather@abc.net.au. It was sunny again in the city. Perth reached a top of 36.7 just before 1 o'clock this afternoon after an overnight low of 20.6. And we had a few places in the single digits overnight. Albany Airport got to just below 9 degrees and the state's coolest spot was Bridgetown at 5.5. And a few locations in the north reached into the 40s, including Carnarvon getting up to 42.3 before midday. Staying in the north, we have a flood watch for parts of the Kimberley, with further flooding possible over the next few days, with the West Kimberley, North Kimberley and East Kimberley rivers likely to be affected. There's also a minor flood warning for the Fitzroy River, with levels expected to peak tomorrow. To the satellite, a band of thick cloud covers much of the country's tropical north due to a monsoon trough spanning from the top of WA all the way to Queensland. Some parts in the Kimberley had some high rainfall totals, including Kununurra with more than 99 millimetres in the gauge. Cloud was thick along the Pilbara coast as tropical low 30U continued tracking west. And there are a few more tropical lows on the radar for the next few days, including in the Northern Territory and off the coast of Queensland, tracking west. Tropical low 29U in North Queensland is expected to make landfall tomorrow and bring rain and possible flooding with it. For southern WA, that west coast trough along the coast is keeping things warm into the weekend. A quick look across the country tomorrow. Sunny in Adelaide, showers easing in Brisbane, rain possible for Darwin, a possible shower in Sydney with a top of 29 and partly cloudy elsewhere. Staying in the north, showers and thunderstorms over the Kimberley, Pilbara, Northern Interior and parts of the Gascoyne. Very hot in those inland parts and windy towards the coast, a top of 34 for Karratha. In the central west, partly cloudy with a slight chance of a shower in the north, a top of 39 for Geraldton, and sunny through to the Goldfields. In the south, still quite warm along the west coast with a top of 34 for Busselton, with lower temperatures and a bit of cloud about the south coast. Possible fog from Bremia Bay to Israelite Bay. For Perth tomorrow, similar conditions To today, where we're looking at a sunny top of 36 after an overnight low of 21. Cooler by the coast, looking at a top of 32 in Fremantle. On local waters, winds tending southerly up to 20 knots, seas up to 1.5 metres. The sun will rise at 6:09 and set at 6:46. And on the outlook, heat building into Saturday with a sunny top of 38 on the forecast, and then it's expected to cool down from Sunday into the high 20s by this time next week, Pamela.
Thanks for that, Kenneth. And that's ABC News for now. You can catch the news anytime on ABC iView. Stay with us now for 7:30.